everyone, it's Book Crazy Katie. Today I want to talk to you about children's books recommendation. I have a combination of classics as well as contemporary books, and I just want to jump in. So my first recommendation is going to be Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I listened to the audiobook, and this is a fantastic audiobook, and I believe that it's actually pretty old. Like, I think this was probably recorded in like the 80s or 90s. Yeah, I'm not seeing exactly when this is, but pretty much you get this kid Charlie who wins a golden ticket because there's a competition to be able to go to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. A bunch of other kids that also won golden tickets to go. They get to explore the chocolate factory, and all kinds of hijinks end up happening, and some of the cast are like truly terrible children on top of it. But it's a fantastic story. I definitely enjoyed this more than Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, even though I think in a lot of ways the film paid tribute to the actual book, but I can't really remember because, like I said, I've never been a big fan of Willy Wonka, so I generally just tried to avoid it while growing up. But highly recommend. I don't think with this book that parents need to really worry about anything like as far as like content goes. Some of these books I'm gonna say a little bit more about probably. And then the next is a book I read a few years ago, but it's probably towards the top of like my favorite books of all time list, and that is going to be L. Frank Baum's The Wizard of Oz. Very similar to the movie, but also very different from the movie. Dorothy is a lot younger in this. She's a 10-year-old little girl, and a tornado happens, and she ends up in the town of Oz, and all kinds of things happen, and she pretty much gets sent on this quest trying to get home to go find the great and powerful Oz. She comes along three other people on her way. She comes along the Scarecrow, the Lion, the Cowardly Lion, and the Tin Man. They all have different goals. Dorothy wants to go home, the Cowardly Lion wants courage, the Scarecrow wants a brain, and the Tin Man wants a heart. And it's just a very endearing story. There are some elements that are a little bit darker, but it's still very kid-friendly. I want to check out the rest of the series someday, and I actually have them all on audiobook as like one little thing. It was pretty cheap that I bought on Google Play. By the way, Google Play is an awesome audiobook resource, and a lot of times I get books for pretty cheap because I generally try to shop on the $10 or less section, and a lot of times there's some pretty popular finds on there. Ellen Montgomery's Anne of Green Gables. I was not an orphan or anything, but there's something about Anne's personality and like how she kind of gets a little bit under like people's skin or annoys them a little bit and is super chatty. That reminds me of like when I was like 10 or 11 and just feeling like I was bothersome to everybody but wanting to like talk everybody's ear off at the same time. Anne of Green Gables is about this orphan girl who gets taken in by this brother and sister, Marilla and Michael, I think? Matthew Tutbert. It's just a very sweet, endearing story, and like they wanted a boy who could do some work, and they ended up with a girl, and Marilla was very adamant about sending Anne back to the orphanage, but got convinced otherwise, and I think Matthew even started kind of taking her back towards the orphanage, but Matthew was a softie and just couldn't do it. But such a wonderful story. You see, I want to say Anne was like 12 years old when this book started. You see her start off at a pretty young age and watch her become this young woman, and by the time the book ends, I want to say she's going to school to be a teacher. But it's so wonderful. Highly recommend if you have a little girl at home. Like, this is so great. And guys, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is not the only Roald Dahl novel that I like and love. The Witches is another good one. I don't have a physical copy of that one because it was an older copy from like the 90s and I didn't like the cover, and I found a new home for it. But this one is probably one of my all-time favorites, and I grew up on the movie before I ever read the book. It's one of my favorite movies, and that would be Roald Dahl's Matilda. This is so wonderful. The movie did a very good job with it. I do feel like they did amp up Matilda's supernatural abilities and made that more of a focus. And that's probably the last thing they did, and they did a little bit more like revenge stuff towards Miss Trunchbull, or yeah, regarding like Miss Honey and stuff. But like I said, very similar, very cute. I definitely love the relationship between Matilda and Miss Honey, and highly recommend. Love both the book and the movie. Another favorite is J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. I highly recommend this. I'm gonna say Peter Pan is very mischievous and a little bit of a brat, and it's a little darker than I'd say the Disney movie, but it's definitely enjoyable. For those of you that like to read Neil Gaiman, I have a Neil Gaiman recommendation, and it's not necessarily the one that most people would like recommended for children's books of his. He writes throughout different genres. He does comic books, he does narration. He narrated an episode or two of Lucifer as God, because Lucifer is based off of a comic that is based off of the Sandman comics, which Neil Gaiman wrote. But this one isn't like the one that I feel pops in most people's head as far as children's book recommendations would go from Neil Gaiman, because I feel like both the Graveyard Book and Coraline are more popular. However, I have yet to read Coraline, and I've seen the movie, but I haven't read the book yet. I listened to the audio book of Graveyard Book, and I have a physical copy and would like to read it physically someday. However, fortunately, the milk is amazing. Probably reads a little younger than some of the books on this recommendations list. Images and slightly different formatting in the book as far as text goes. However, it's about a father who gets sent on a trip to go get milk and all the hijinks that ensue in the process of him going to go get a carton of milk at the grocery store. Yeah. This next one I'm going to say is probably a modern classic, or will be a modern classic. It's probably less than 20 years old still. However, it's highly beloved, especially in the booktube community. And that would be Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. I think this middle grade series is fantastic. Rick Riordan used to be a history teacher, and he sets his books in mythology. Percy Jackson is a middle grade series, and then as it's gone on, his books have become young adult. But you follow Percy Jackson, who is set to do some quests for the gods of Olympus, ends up at Camp Half-Blood, which is a demigod training camp, and all this thing happens set modern America, and pretty much all the different historical or Greek mythological places, instead of being located in Greece in the mythological world of Olympus, things have moved, and you get, I think it's like the Empire State Building or something that has like Mount Olympus, and you get like a Vegas and casino that ends up being this little Hades, like Hades created this like world thing, and I can't think of the right way to call it, but it's very interesting. Definitely, all of these books I feel like I should reread, and I keep on saying that, but definitely worth a reread. I'd love to get the audiobooks for these someday and just listen to them, because I think they'd be so fantastic to listen to. But they're super fun, super funny, and I think they're a great they're a great way of introducing your children to Greek mythology. Like, he does such a great job of introducing Greek mythology in a nice, fun way that I think kids would really react well to. And this is probably like one of my favorites right here, and that is Jessica Townsend's Nevermore. And there's only 2 books out. The 3rd book comes out this year. The 3rd book's called Hollowpox. But this is Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow. This book is often compared to the Harry Potter series, and I've read 5 of the Harry Potter series, and I can see where the, parallels are coming from, because they both start out at the age of 11. Morgan Crow grows up in this town, and she, every 11 years, they end up getting rid of these children because they believe them to be cursed. And then when she's one of those unfortunate cursed children that they're trying to get rid of. Something happens where she gets offerings to go to Nevermore and be part of the Wondrous Society, or compete to be part of the Wondrous Society. She gets thrown into this training to try to get accepted at this school. The whole time she's like, I don't have any powers, I don't have any talents, how am I supposed to do this? She doesn't feel like she fits there. She's smuggled into the area, and it's just really fantastic. There's an awesome cast of characters in this, and I think it's a very heartwarming story. So out of all the books on my list, if you are a parent and you're trying to find books for your children to read, or if you're really into children's books and stuff, this one might throw you off. It's probably the darkest out of all of them. If you are a parent, I highly recommend reading the book before you let your child read it. But it's Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi. I've done a review for this if you want to check it out. But I really think it's a heartwarming tale, and why am I going with heartwarming all the time now? I think it's a fantastic cautionary tale, actually, I think is what I'd rather say. It pretty much hammers in the idea of being a good child, and if you're a good child, good things will happen. If you're a bad child, bad things and consequences are going to happen. If you don't listen to your parents and elders, you're going to end up in a world of trouble. But I definitely love this story. Really nice to see where Pinocchio ended up going on all of his adventures, because he ends up in some stuff. This is definitely darker than the Disney movie, and I feel like for a Disney movie, Pinocchio is one of the darker ones, or has some more serious things going on in it, or more troublesome stuff than some of the other Disney movies. The last one I wanted to talk about was Our Shot and the End of Time. This is a series, I think it's probably going to be 5 books. Rick Riordan has an imprint at Disney Hyperion. This is probably more of a 4-star read for me instead of a 5-star, but I think this would be fantastic for little kids, and I think the writing's very good. However, with it being a Rick Riordan imprint, this is one where I feel like maybe there's a little bit of a formula being followed. As I said, this is my last recommendation. I think children would really love all these books. Here's the complete list of my recommendations, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!